There's nothing like discovering America's great cities from above. To get a bird's eye view of their awe-inspiring heights, their dazzling public spaces, and the systems that keep them running day and night. Many of America's cities were built on the hopes and dreams of early colonists. But each one has taken its own unique journey to become an American metropolis. A rivalry between two architects once gave New York City the highest skyline in the world. Casinos, vice, and spectacles of light turned a desert valley in Nevada into Las Vegas. And savvy developers transformed a tiny barrier island in Florida into Miami Beach. Along the way, the people of America's cities have had to endure unimaginable tragedy. For San Franciscans, it was massive earthquakes. For the people of Chicago, it was a devastating fire. And for New Yorkers, it was the terrorist attacks of 9/11. But each time, they have come back stronger than ever before. No city in America would be what it is today without the hard work of people willing to take daring risks. There are those who blast out tunnels deep underground, engineers who have to climb to the top of the nation's most iconic spires, and the teams who work through the night to make sure ships, planes, and trains are ready to go at dawn. These are the stories of America's great cities. When you soar across America's cities and look closely down at the towering structures below, chances are you'll spot some of the most daring workers in America. The jobs they do make life in our cities possible, day and night. Just outside San Francisco, linemen are getting a lift by helicopter. They spend their days stringing cable on new towers that keep the Bay Area running. In Las Vegas, this engineer starts his day balancing on top of the stratosphere, almost 900 feet off the ground. He's making sure the thrill ride at the top is safe and ready to terrify tourists with its spins and tilts, high over the Las Vegas Strip. In New York City, a legendary team of workers called the Sandhogs is starting their daily descent. They'll spend their day 13 stories underground, drilling through solid bedrock to create new rail tunnels under the East River. Dozens of their members have died or been injured in tunnel collapses, explosions, and crane accidents. Over the years, the Sandhogs have carved out a vast tunnel system for trains, water, and waste that have all helped turn New York into one giant metropolis. Much of the work that keeps America's cities running is out of sight. High above New York City's streets, John Schaffner is just starting his shift, along with fellow engineer David Brown. They operate two of the tallest cranes in Manhattan. Every morning, they disappear into the sky, step by step. By the time they reach the crow's nest, they're more than 1,000 feet above the ground. Today, John and Dave will spend their shifts lifting giant steel beams and other construction materials up to the top of 3 World Trade Center. Their work helps keep New Yorkers below safe as this skyscraper rises high above them. Operating a crane on top of a skyscraper in Manhattan is not a job for the faint-hearted. But just imagine being lashed to a spire 1,700 feet off the ground. These men are electrical engineers working on the top of One World Trade Center, the tallest building in Manhattan. It's also known as the Freedom Tower. The white panels they're installing are turning this spire into the highest television broadcast antenna in the nation. Even if we can't see it from the ground, there's always work being done on the tops of America's tallest structures. And that work is especially important in Seattle, since float planes pass right across the city when they come into land on Lake Union. That's what keeps engineer Valerie Palenchuk busy. Today, he's on his way up to change the bulb in an aviation beacon, 40 feet above the top of Seattle's Space Needle. Once he gets there, it takes just a few minutes to swap out the old bulb for a new one. But one slip could send him dangling from his safety wire 605 feet over Seattle. Today, it's mission accomplished without a hitch. Now, no matter what the weather, pilots who come in for a landing on Lake Union will still have the Space Needle clearly in their sights. But there may be no place in America with high-rise work as challenging as Las Vegas. This city gets a constant pounding by dust that blows in from across the Nevada desert. Every day, Ulysses Cervantes and Miguel Lopez have to do the impossible: keep the more than 1 million square feet of glass on the roof of the Luxor Hotel and Casino dust-free. The only way to clean this Las Vegas version of an Egyptian pyramid is to scrub and squeegee the entire surface by hand, even in blazing summer heat. It's the kind of hard work that the builders of Egypt's ancient pyramids would probably have had a lot of respect for. But as soon as Ulysses and Miguel are done, they have to start all over again from the top. Since most casinos in the Las Vegas Valley are sheathed with glass, it takes a lot of window washers to keep them all clean. They have to coordinate carefully with casino management to make sure guests inside don't get surprised. The men on this team aren't just colleagues, they're friends and climbing buddies. When the workday is done, they often head out to nearby Red Rock Canyon National Conservation Area to climb its giant boulders and steep faces of weathered red sandstone. In a state as rugged as Nevada, it's probably not surprising that casinos in Vegas get their windows scrubbed clean by teams of talented rock climbers. But in Chicago, the city's tallest skyscraper gets its regular bath without a window washer in sight. When the enormous black forms of the Sears Tower, now known as the Willis Tower, were completed in 1973, it was the tallest building in the world, with a roofline that topped out at 1,450 feet. But covering its facade were 16,100 windows. That's a lot of glass to be squeegeed by hand, and the engineers knew it. So they made plans for an elite squad of window cleaning robots that could be deployed from the tower's various rooftops. Every couple of weeks, each robot moves out from its rooftop garage and glides to the edge of the tower. Then it deploys down the facade to clean every inch of glass with brushes, water, and mechanical squeegees. This is how the Willis Tower gets a regular bath without a single human window washer dangling dangerously over the windy city. When you look out past the skyscrapers of just about every American metropolis, there's almost always a body of water. Every American city has its own unique story, and water has played a leading role in many of them, right from the days of their founding. When the Puritans arrived on the Massachusetts coast and founded Boston in 1630, they chose a small peninsula, protected on one side by a natural harbor and the Charles River on the other. Boston went on to be a major port and shipbuilding center, and a hub for lumber, rum, codfish, and the tea that helped spark the American Revolution. When President George Washington was given the task of choosing a site for the nation's new capital in 1790, he picked land next to the busy port of Georgetown, near the confluence of the Potomac and Anacostia rivers. Chicago was established on the shores of Lake Michigan as a trading post, with easy access to other Great Lakes and rivers that led into the interior. Seattle grew up on the shores of a bay, where newly cut timber could be hauled down from the hills above and loaded directly on ships that carried it to San Francisco. San Francisco itself went from being a small Spanish colony to a boomtown during the California Gold Rush starting in 1848, thanks to its location on a protected harbor where hundreds of ships arrived packed with hopeful prospectors. But no city has benefited more from its navigable waterways than New York. It's 5 a.m., and the RMS Queen Mary II is just arriving in New York Harbor after a transatlantic crossing. She's on her way to Pier 12 in Red Hook, Brooklyn. Between the 1890s and the 1950s, close to 12 million immigrants arrived by ship in these very same waters. They eagerly awaited the sight of the Statue of Liberty to know that they had finally arrived in America. Once, these docks were the heart of New York City's economy and packed day and night with longshoremen who raced to unload arriving freighters, often by hand. It was here where the legendary gangster Al Capone got his start as a petty criminal, before going on to be a crime boss in Chicago. But Brooklyn started to lose its preeminence as the world's largest cargo hub, starting in the late 1950s, thanks to one man's invention, just across New York Harbor in New Jersey. One day in 1955, Malcolm McLean, the owner of an East Coast trucking company, had a brilliant idea. At the time, most freighter cargo was loaded piece by piece into ships' hulls. McLean imagined how fast and lucrative it would be if he could drop the entire trailers from his trucks directly onto ships by crane with the cargo still inside. His invention was the steel shipping container. In 1956, McLean bought and retrofitted an old freighter and then launched the world's first container ship from this New Jersey dock for its maiden voyage to Houston. It wasn't long before cargo was crisscrossing the world in these now very familiar-looking standardized steel boxes. As more and more facilities for increasingly larger container ships were constructed in New Jersey, New York City's once lively docks became quiet. 130 million containers are now shipped by sea every year, and more than 51 million of them pass through U.S. ports. And today, ports in cities across the country are on the verge of another revolution. It's being tested here in Long Beach, California. This is America's second busiest container seaport. It lies inside the most populated county in the nation, Los Angeles. Close to 8 million shipping containers pass through the Port of Long Beach every year. But at one dock here, there are almost no humans in sight. Computers track and organize every one of these shipping containers from the moment it gets offloaded from a truck or train. Robotic lifters pluck each one from the stack and place it on a driverless shuttle that delivers it directly to the ship, exactly at the time it needs to be loaded. The only longshoremen here are the ones in the cranes who actually lift the container onto the ship. But soon, that job will also be done by a robot. Automated ports will soon force thousands of dock workers across the U.S. to find new jobs and revolutionize how cargo moves around the world. But there's still one step that will always require a person at the controls, guiding these colossal ships safely from the ocean up to the dock. In Miami, it's done by local ship pilots. Today, pilot John Nitkin is on his way out to meet the colossal Maersk Sanaa. Stretching almost 1,100 feet long, this megaship can carry up to 7,500 20-foot containers. Each container can hold hundreds of thousands of dollars of cargo. When a similar-sized ship, called the MOL Comfort, broke in half and sank in 2013 in the waters off Yemen, the losses ran over $400 million. It's why John has to guide this ship very carefully into port. Miami's shipping lane doesn't make it easy for vessels this big. Compared to other major ports, it's extremely narrow. One mistake, and this ship could quickly run aground and shut down all cargo and cruise ship traffic into and out of the port of Miami. But John has been piloting ships through this channel for more than 20 years. He lands the Sanaa gently at its dock, safe and sound. Recent innovations, like the shipping container and cutting-edge technology at major ports, have turned cities into enormous hubs for international trade. But from the days they were founded, America's cities have always been laboratories for the testing of big ideas. By the 1890s, Boston had a problem. Its population was booming, but its narrow colonial streets were clogged with horse-drawn carts and trolleys. That's what led the city to carve out and build the first working subway system in America, which it completed in 1897. And Boston wasn't the only city rescued by a major work of engineering. One of the biggest and strangest projects took place here in Chicago. In the late 19th century, the water of the Chicago River was full of waste and industrial chemicals that flowed out into Lake Michigan and then polluted the city's fresh water supply. Chicago residents often suffered from outbreaks of cholera and other diseases. The fix that engineers came up with was a big one. To provide clean drinking water, they proposed reversing the flow of the Chicago River as it passed through the city. To do it, they built a 28-mile canal, which would draw clean water out of the lake, send it through the city, and then south toward the Mississippi River. That way, the polluted water in the river wouldn't enter Lake Michigan. It was one of the largest engineering and excavation projects in the nation's history and took 8 years to complete. The Chicago River still flows in reverse through downtown Chicago today. The challenge of finding solutions to the growing needs of America's cities also led to the creation of many of our nation's most beloved landmarks. By the end of the 19th century, ferries still carried people between San Francisco and towns and cities to the north. Spanning the opening to San Francisco Bay with a bridge seemed to many like an impossible engineering challenge. Critics were fearful it would hurt business, since this waterway was also a shipping channel. And some were worried it might collapse during a major quake. When the Golden Gate Bridge was completed in April 1937, its main span stretched 4,200 feet, making it the longest suspension bridge in the world. It held that title until 1964, when New York City built an even longer suspension bridge, called the Verrazano Narrows, between Brooklyn and Staten Island. Almost every major city in America has its own story of an engineering marvel that was key to its survival. Los Angeles may never have become the most populated county in America if it hadn't bought up vast stretches of land in a water-filled valley to the north, and then built a 338-mile-long aqueduct to get that water down to LA. Phoenix relies on its own complex system of canals and pipes to get the water it needs from the Colorado River. And New Orleans' survival depends on a series of giant floodgates to keep out hurricane surge. Some cities have had to create new land. When the Puritans founded Boston in 1630, its footprint was tiny. But starting in the 1800s, the city embarked on enormous land-building projects, chopped off its original hills, and used that earth to expand Boston's boundaries into what they are today. Even Boston Logan International Airport is built almost entirely on landfill. But as engineers figured out how to move and secure colossal amounts of earth and rubble to expand their cities outward, others were busy designing new kinds of structures that would allow cities to grow vertically into the sky. Some of those early engineering marvels have almost been forgotten today. One of them can be found in Seattle. After Lyman Cornelius Smith had made a fortune selling guns and typewriters, he commissioned a new office tower here over Pioneer Square in 1909. For more than half a century, his 38-story Smith Tower was the tallest building on the West Coast. Its distinctive pyramid-shaped roof was a landmark for those arriving in Seattle by both land and sea. But today, few people picture Smith Tower when they think of Seattle. Most think of the Space Needle, which was built for the 1962 World's Fair. It was carefully engineered to steal the limelight from Smith Tower as the tallest building west of the Mississippi. But there has never been a skyscraper race in America like the one that happened in New York and changed the skyline of Manhattan forever. In the late 1920s, two architects received commissions to design new skyscrapers in New York City. The two men had once been partners, but now they were arch rivals, and each wanted his building to be the highest in the world. 40 Wall Street, with its distinctive copper dome, was completed in 1930. Its architect, H. Craig Severance, was confident that his building would hold the title as the world's tallest. And it did, but only for a few weeks. At the time, Severance's former partner, architect William Van Allen, was putting the finishing touches on the Chrysler Building, here at the corner of Lexington Avenue and 42nd Street. With stainless steel cladding covering its crown and streamlined Art Deco motifs, it was designed to celebrate the great age of the automobile and the meteoric rise of Chrysler. To make sure the Chrysler Building would be the tallest in the world, Van Allen developed a secret plan. Inside the upper floors of the building, he quietly constructed a 185-foot-high steel spire that would make the Chrysler Building taller than 40 Wall Street. On October 23, 1929, a small team of construction workers slowly raised it out of the building for the world to see. They bolted it into place and capped out the Chrysler Building at 1,046 feet, 120 feet higher than 40 Wall Street. Van Allen had succeeded in stealing his former partner's prize. But the very next year, he found himself in second place. When the Empire State Building was completed on May 1st, 1931, it soared even higher, rising 1,250 feet. It remained the tallest building in the world for 4 decades until 1971, when the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center were finally completed in Lower Manhattan. Now, after 9/11, One World Trade Center stands on the site of the former Twin Towers, and holds the prize as the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere. But that hasn't put an end to New York City's skyscraper race. Today, developers are competing to engineer some of the world's highest residential towers that will appeal to the wealthiest buyers on Earth. This was the first of New York's new stiletto-thin residential skyscrapers. It's called 432 Park Avenue and lies on what's now referred to as Billionaire's Row. Some of these apartments have sold for more than $30 million. To make sure buyers won't get woozy when 432 Park Avenue sways in the wind, engineers have armed it with high-tech shock absorbers. 3 of the upper floors don't have any apartments. When you glide by their windows and peer inside, you can see the long tubes of what are called tuned mass dampers. They weigh 1,300 tons and are used to counteract the force of the wind and keep the tower steady when it blows hard outside. High-end luxury towers like this one have taken the lifestyles of the 1% to new heights in New York City. Every city's unique history, style, and even personality are often reflected in its tallest buildings. When a developer named Ray Hunt built a new hotel here in Dallas in 1978, he decided to put its revolving restaurant on top of a separate tower instead of on the roof of the hotel itself. He named it Reunion Tower to honor some of Dallas's earliest settlers who lived in a community called La Reunion. Today, no structure says Dallas, Texas like this one. The New York Times has claimed that it's as much a Dallas icon as the Gateway Arch is for St. Louis. But not every city has wanted a skyline filled with skyscrapers. It wasn't so long ago that residents in San Francisco fought hard to try to keep their beloved city skyscraper-free. For many who grew up here, the 210-foot-high Coit Tower, which has been perched on Telegraph Hill since 1933, was the perfect symbol of San Francisco's history and spirit. It was paid for by Lily Hitchcock Coit, who wanted to leave a gift that would enhance San Francisco's beauty and honor its firefighters. But in the 1960s, the Transamerica Corporation revealed plans for a new, more than 1,000-foot-high tall skyscraper downtown that would radically change San Francisco's skyline. An ugly fight ensued. San Franciscans protested, arguing that their city would soon be buried under what they called a skyline of tombstones. In the end, they lost their fight, though Transamerica did agree to reduce the height of its new headquarters by almost 200 feet. For more than 4 decades, it was the tallest building in San Francisco. And over time, its height and pyramid shape made it a San Francisco icon. San Franciscans may have fought against skyscrapers, but now their city is packed with them. And today, the colossal new 61-story home of the tech giant Salesforce dominates the Bay Area. Rising 1,070 feet, it dwarfs every other structure around it. Residents of the Bay Area either love it or hate it. It's one of the most visible symbols of how Silicon Valley and tech wealth have changed San Francisco, along with rising housing prices and endless traffic on Bay Area highways and bridges. If every major city in America could write its own biography, they would all be filled with fascinating stories of their inspiring rise from humble origins, great booms and busts, and of hopes and dreams that have led to the creation of some of the most spectacular urban spaces in the world. But the most gripping chapters in some of these tales would be of the devastating tragedies that have struck many American cities, often without warning. Raging hurricanes and deadly floods have long been two of the biggest dangers to the residents of cities along the eastern seaboard and the Gulf of Mexico. When Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans and the surrounding Gulf Coast in August 2005, it left millions of people homeless and 1,800 dead. 80% of New Orleans was ravaged by floodwaters. But the biggest danger for West Coast cities are massive forces deep underground. When Mount St. Helens erupted on May 18, 1980, it blanketed the city of Portland 50 miles away with ash. Seattle lies just northwest of Mount Rainier, one of the most dangerous volcanoes on Earth. California's coastal cities face a different threat, a 750-mile-long earthquake fault called the San Andreas. It lies on the Ring of Fire, a long line of earthquake zones and volcanoes that passes under the west coast of the United States. Geologists have warned that Los Angeles could be overdue for a major quake that could be as powerful as magnitude 8. When you follow this fault line north, it passes just west of Silicon Valley and the city of San Francisco. At exactly 5:12 a.m. on April 18, 1906, the San Andreas unleashed a massive 7.9 magnitude earthquake here. The ground shook for less than a minute, but the effects were catastrophic. 500 city blocks were damaged or destroyed. Fires broke out, and 3,000 people died. By the time the aftershocks had subsided, 80% of San Francisco had been leveled. The 1906 earthquake remains one of the worst natural disasters in U.S. history. The San Andreas struck the Bay Area again in 1989. The 6.9 magnitude Loma Prieta quake left 63 people dead. 42 of them died when an elevated freeway collapsed in Oakland. A young motorist also perished after a 50-foot section of the former span of the Oakland Bay Bridge crashed down on the roadway below. But just like in 1906, Bay Area residents rallied and rebuilt their houses, bridges, and highways. When you soar over San Francisco's colorful streets and gleaming towers today, you'd never know that this California city once lay in ruins. It's a comeback story that's played out in city after city in America, and no place more dramatically than in Chicago. On the night of October 8, 1892, a small spark lit a barn on fire at what is now 137 DeKoven Street. The fire quickly spread to nearby structures. High winds fanned the flames and pushed the fires north and east toward Lake Michigan. For almost 4 days, the city of Chicago burned, until rain showers finally put the last of the fires out. The devastation was catastrophic. 17,000 Chicago buildings destroyed. 90,000 residents left homeless, and almost 300 dead. But even as their city smoldered, the people of Chicago were already vowing to rebuild. Their city's Great Fire ended up being a spark that led to innovations in engineering and design that created one of the most dazzling skylines in the world. In the aftermath of the fire, Chicago developers raced to secure lots for new buildings, and land prices skyrocketed. To maximize the land, they set out to build the highest structures they could. A new material called structural steel would make that possible in exciting ways the world had never seen before. Using steel posts and beams instead of heavy walls of stone, engineers in Chicago could design new kinds of buildings that could be taller than ever before and sheathed in glass. It led to a revolution in skyscraper design. Many of those early steel-framed buildings are still standing in downtown Chicago. And soaring above them are skyscrapers that have taken structural steel to whole new levels. The design of the John Hancock Center was revolutionary. The enormous black diamond shapes on its exterior walls aren't just for looks. They've been welded together to create a 100-story high tapered steel tube which holds the building up. Since the structure is on the outside, it's called an exoskeleton. Chicago may never have become a city of engineering marvels if it weren't for the Great Chicago Fire. But no urban tragedy in recent memory was as devastating as what happened on 9/11/2001, when terrorists brought down the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan. 5 years later, in 2006, construction crews began to prepare the site of Ground Zero for a new skyscraper called One World Trade Center, also known as the Freedom Tower. Today, with its angled glass facade and soaring spire, the Freedom Tower rises a symbolic 1,776 feet over the site of Ground Zero. President Barack Obama came to New York while the Freedom Tower was being built and left behind an inscription on one of the new structure's beams. "We remember, we rebuild, we come back stronger." And that speaks to the people of every American city who have always responded to tragedy with resilience, strength, and an eye on the future. But they've also honored those who suffered and perished with stunning works of engineering and design. On April 15, 2013, 2 Islamic terrorists detonated their bombs at the finish line of the Boston Marathon, here on Boylston Street. The explosions killed 3 people and injured 250 others. 3 days later, the men ambushed and murdered a security officer on the campus of MIT. In 2015, MIT unveiled this memorial to their slain officer, Sean Collier. It was designed by architecture professor J. Mijin Yoon. It's made up of 32 massive interlocking pieces of granite that symbolize the strength and unity that brought members of this community together after the bombings and Collier's death. When night falls on New York City, the site of the former Twin Towers glows with light. This is the National September 11th Memorial. It was designed as 2 large reflecting pools that have been placed inside the former footprints of the Twin Towers. New York City decided to preserve these 2 sites as a way for New Yorkers to remember the nearly 3,000 people who perished in the 1993 and 2001 terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center. It also honors the first responders and others who lost their lives in the aftermath. After dark, every city paints its own unique story with light. But there may be no 2 cities that do it with bigger spectacles than Miami and Las Vegas. One of the best ways to understand the outsized role that cities play in the life of America is to peer down on the United States like an astronaut from space. Today, more than 80% of Americans live in urban areas that light up North America in great pools of light. From the glow of Times Square in New York City to the marquees of casinos along the Las Vegas Strip, to the streets of Chicago that fan out from the shores of Lake Michigan. To Houston, with highways that look like giant spokes of a wheel at night. And to the many cities that surround San Francisco Bay. These vast urban centers may look just like tapestries of light from space. But when you get up close, they offer a chance to discover the myriad ways that people in these very different cities work and play. As the moon rises over the Santa Monica Hills, colorful veins appear across Los Angeles as thousands of commuters hit the road on LA County's 515 miles of freeway. Tonight, most of these drivers are heading home, but some are on their way downtown to watch the Lakers take on the Houston Rockets here at their home court at the Staples Center. Night brings out sports addicts in cities all across the country. And not just fans of professional teams. Here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, a Friday night ritual is underway. Crowds are cheering on two of their favorite high school teams, the Saxy Mustangs and the Rowlett Eagles, in a stadium that's almost big enough to be pro. If the Mustangs win tonight, they'll take home their third championship in a row. There's plenty of land in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex to build stadiums and high school football fields. But that's not the case here in Miami. Every night, soccer players come to a parking garage at 444 Brickell Avenue downtown to play on fields built on a rooftop. In South American cities like Lima and Rio de Janeiro, it's common to find soccer fields on the roofs of buildings, since there's very little space left on the ground. These fields have been owned by Pavel Pardo, a former player for Mexico's national soccer team. The pickup games here last right up until 2 a.m. when the lights go off and the players finally go home. But for many in Miami, that's the time when their night is just getting started. Especially here along Ocean Drive in Miami Beach. It's been an all-night party town since this city was founded in 1915. That's when developers transformed Miami Beach from a narrow, mosquito-plagued barrier island into a destination with luxury clubs and hotels. To lure wealthy vacationers from northern states like New York, they built 800 Art Deco-style buildings, many of which are still standing. One of them is the Colony Hotel at 736 Ocean Drive, which was completed in 1935. Hotels like this one helped turn Miami Beach into a boomtown in the 1930s. Today, Ocean Drive is still a big draw for clubgoers who fill its rooftop bars and try and get past the ropes at popular nightclubs like Live inside the legendary Fontainebleau Hotel. But the city of Miami itself, located just across Biscayne Bay, also knows how to put on a party. It's the host of the annual Ultra Music Festival. Every year, it turns South Florida's largest city into a giant spectacle with huge explosions of sound and light. But there may be no metropolis in the nation with nighttime entertainment as captivating as Las Vegas. The Vegas Strip is familiar to many as a feast of color and light. But one of its biggest spectacles is a choreographed dance of water. These are the fountains of the Bellagio. Under the surface of this 8-acre man-made lake are 1,200 water jets. Some of them, called super shooters, can send water 240 feet into the sky. Vegas may be the entertainment capital of the nation, but when the fountains of the Bellagio start their carefully choreographed dance, all eyes along the Strip peer up in awe at what may be Vegas's most popular performers of all. But one spectacle few people here ever see is that of the hundreds of winged nocturnal predators that swarm in the skies over the Strip at night in search of prey. Shooting out of the top of the Luxor Hotel and Casino is a very powerful ray of light called the sky beam. It was created with 39 7,000-watt bulbs and has been called the brightest beam of light in the world. It's so powerful, the air over the Luxor can reach 500 degrees Fahrenheit. This shaft of light draws thousands of insects, and those insects make the sky beam the perfect feeding ground for bats. Look closely, and chances are you'll see hundreds of these predators swarming as they feast in the night sky. This may be the strangest spectacle of all in Las Vegas. It's just after sunset in Seattle, and at the base of the Space Needle, a series of strange glass forms have just come alive with light. These brilliant plant-like shapes are the work of glass artist Dale Chihuly, a native of the nearby city of Tacoma. People come here after dark to experience this quiet garden of glass, which was created in 2012 on the site of a former amusement park. Chihuly, who trained in Europe, pioneered new ways of producing glass, so he could create delicate natural forms of animals and plants. This garden is now one of the city's most visited sites. Across the country, outside of Boston, students are gathering in a circle of light in Harvard Yard. This is a temporary installation by artist Teresita Fernandez. She made it with thousands of flexible rods that move and make sound in the wind. Fernandez named her work Autumn, Nothing Personal, after an essay by African-American writer James Baldwin. She wants it to get students here thinking and talking about how human history and the world itself are in a constant state of change. There's really no end to what you can discover when you peer down on life in America's cities after dark. That's especially true in Los Angeles for those who come here for a drink at the highest outdoor bar in the Western Hemisphere. It's called Spire 73 because it lies on the 73rd floor of the Wilshire Grand, the tallest building west of the Mississippi. This skyscraper, which was completed in 2017, was designed to celebrate California's landscape. The glass crown was shaped after a rock formation in Yosemite National Park called Half Dome, while its reflective facade is said to have been inspired by the glassy surface of California's Merced River. But for many people, this building's biggest draw is the view from its rooftop bar. 1,000 feet above the streets of LA, it offers Angelinos a chance to look out across the dazzling lights of the most populated county in America, from the Sunset Strip to the Santa Monica Pier. And if they look down, they can also catch sight of their fellow Californians ice skating in Pershing Square, right in the middle of this famously hot and dry metropolis. These are just a few of the millions of lights that make LA County glow from space. Whether you're looking down on their streets from staggering heights or racing right across their waters, America's great cities are full of riveting tales. One rose from ashes to build the tallest tower in the world. It was a simple idea in another that triggered a revolution in global trade. There are inspiring artists whose work dazzles with light, and workers willing to take daring risks to keep their metropolis moving day and night. These are the powerful stories of America's great cities.